Hello and welcome to Divinely Empowered with Antonia. Today we have Tyler Tivador, who is a podcaster. He has got the Immersive Podcast with some esteemed guests. More on that later. He's had a bit of a wild journey within spirituality. Crazy childhood. He's been in Hollywood. He was in organized crime. And then he's had a 9 to 5 and been a musician. So he's got a bit of a wild story, and I'm very interested in that and grateful to have you here. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you, Antonia, and I appreciate the introduction. Thank you for mentioning the Immersive Podcast. That's something we're working on very hard right now, and I indeed have worn many hats. So I come from a unique place to speak from all of them, and I've always believed you see a lot more from the edge than you do from the center, and that's hence the 9 lives Antonia just mentioned. So thank you so much for having me on.
Yay. So, okay, since you mentioned the Immersive Podcast, tell me about your guests you've had so far and how that's all going.
So the Immersive Podcast is, I would say, roughly, and I don't like to define things, but it's in the spirituality, disclosure, ascension type of space. We're on YouTube and we're on Spotify. So far, we have 4 episodes up on video and on audio. I'm filming another one today, and we're putting out 2 episodes a week. Even though we just started, we're a new show. We're doing this full time. As I said, 2 episodes a week is kind of the pace right now. Ismael Perez was our first guest. So far, I've had Tom Massari, who was Darryl Anka, the man who channels Bashar. I was his mentor, a channeler. He came on and channeled for me. I had Natalie Nadine. She is a healer. She works with the All Shift Happily Now movement. Some people that are coming up: Sarah Bressman Cosme, author of Hypnotist Journey to Atlantis. Debbie Solaris, I'm actually filming with her later today. Tim Tactics, Sarah Azula, also involved with Gaia and the All Shift Happily Now movement, and many, many more to come. That's just for this and next month. We've really got a lot of promotion behind it. It's going well.
Amazing. And I'm going to be on it too sometimes. So
and Tanya is a part of that list of esteemed guests. Absolutely.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so tell me, where do you want to start? What's your some of your spiritual journey, your dark night of the soul, your crazy childhood? Where do you go on? Just give us a sort of overview of who Tyler is.
Well, who Tyler is now is I'm happy to finally be the host of a podcast, even though it's only got a few episodes. I am really into it. I really believe in it, and I'm feeling it, and I'm loving it. I'll go back about 3.5, 4 years ago. I was working as an interior designer. I had a 9 to 5 job. It was a good job. Lived in the suburbs. Everything was great. I'm in a long-term relationship. Was living a very normal, blessed upper middle class American life. And that is when I had I know it's become a bit of a cliche, but you could also say it's becoming mainstream. That classic spiritual awakening. I truly had an abrupt awakening where a lot of things happened, but it caused me to leave my job, leave my career entirely. And all I knew was that I was going to devote myself full time to discovering myself with a capital S again, and do what I could to serve this collective consciousness that I kind of felt like I was able to tap into and felt a part of again. As Antonia mentioned before that, I did live a crazy life. I wore many hats. That wasn't my first introduction to spirituality or anything 3 years ago, as I mentioned, but that was when I really went through the massive dark night of the soul. And it's only been until very recently that I've found myself in a place where I'm completely comfortable saying I'm a full-time podcaster. I'm doing this full-time. I'm going to conferences. I'm doing press live. I have a lot of things planned. I'm not using a safety net or anything like that. I'm just giving, hoping to attract, and things have been working out for me so far. The universe has taken care of me. I have said before, I don't recommend that if you want to be a light worker or spiritual, that you don't need to just quit your job. But maybe that's something I had to do.
Yeah, it's a big thing, isn't it? And scary.
It was, but what's the dark night of the soul without the little scary, right?
Yeah, I did it when I was a lot younger. I went full time into healing when I was about 25. So
Okay. Very cool.
yeah, it was a
Yeah.
while
So
ago. Yeah.
that's amazing. Yeah, I've read some of your press, and congratulations, you were in the Sun recently in UK. I saw that right up on you.
I haven't announced this, but I was actually in the Mirror as well. I didn't
Oh.
know. I randomly Googled my own name last week because I was looking for the Sun article to send to somebody. And so I just put Antonia Harmon in, and the first thing that came up was the Mirror, which I didn't know I was actually in. So I was actually in the Mirror, the Star, the Sun, and Cornwall Live being the main publications.
Congratulations.
And, yeah, so the Mirror piece is interesting. I've just asked them. So in the Mirror piece, I'm talking about my reverse aging. I'll show you it because I've got a handy board here, which shows my reverse aging. So if you look at the difference between here to here, or my actual face now, like that downward line's completely gone.
That's quite incredible. And there's the three of you there too. They're life size, so it's quite interesting.
Yeah, so it's the lines on my nose, my lips are thick, and my forehead lines. Like I look, and I'm heavier now, but I look like I'm heavier there because I've got jowls there, and now my face, I've actually had sort of an energetic facelift from it.
You look wonderful. You're glowing.
What?
You're glowing. You look wonderful.
Thank you. So unfortunately, in the article from Mirror, it's great, but it talks about my reverse aging. But unfortunately, they put two pictures post. So they put two of the younger pictures in, so it just looks like I'm batty because it just says, Antonia she thinks she looks 10 years younger, but I look exactly the same in both the pictures.
Well, any press is good press.
I just emailed the journo and said, please, can you put the before picture up as well? And then I'm going to announce it. So I haven't sent it to my newsletter or anyone yet because I'm waiting for the right press to be on there.
Get that fixed. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah,
but it is working.
Cool.
Yeah. So I did loads and loads of press. So I'm hoping that's going to go somewhere with it because it's useful to have the press. But then we need to.
Yeah, it's a great tool. Absolutely. I mean, like I said, no press, bad press. I mean, I guess that's not 100% true, but yeah, it's a great tool, of course.
It's actually very good press. It's just I would like the picture to be the correct picture.
Yeah, I want everything to be perfect.
I was in menopause, which I'm not. I worked on somebody who was in perimenopause, and I reversed her perimenopause, so they had a little inaccurate.
It's quite amazing. Yeah, I've seen some of on your social platforms and on some YouTube videos and things like that, some promotional things that you've done, some energetic healings, just little promos and things. I know you don't publish those sessions, but it's very cool.
I do. I mean, I do some of it. I do. I do like dissolving trauma and things like that. When I come on your pod, I can do a live trauma dissolving session. People can get a sense of it.
We can absolutely. That's actually something that I've tried to incorporate with the Immersive Podcast recently. Is people who do certain gifts, I want them to showcase them, and I'm willing to be a participant in those things. So to whatever degree I can, that's like a cool way to anybody can serve the collective. And that's a way that I found, let people showcase their gifts, not only on my podcast, but on me, and let me talk about it and let the world know that I'm doing it full time and I'm really in it. That's what I care about. That's what I can do.
Yeah, me too. I do probably at least 2 a week. I like doing the recordings. It's fun. And I was a TV presenter back in the day. So
you came from typical media background, etc., right?
Yeah, media background, long time ago. But I worked in PR, and then I was a TV presenter, and then I was a healer. So yeah, I've done a few different things.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to cut you off there, Antonia. I didn't.
No problem. Okay, so go on. Tell us about some of your crazy stories and how you went from, being like Mr. Spiritual nowadays, who's devoting himself to service, and where you came from, which was quite different.
Yeah. So, of course, I live in Tampa, Florida. I was actually born in Clearwater, Florida, which is right outside of Tampa. I grew up split between Tampa area, Florida, and New England. So actually, they're much different than each other. New England is like a different country than Florida. Anybody who's spent time in both places would probably attest to that. They're just different places, but I had no problem growing up split between the two. My childhood was a little bit rocky. I never knew my parents to be married or anything like that. I know Antonia deals with a lot of trauma type stuff, and she's a healer and everything. And that's something that I've opened up a lot more on over the years. I used to be somebody who was very proudly masculine and stoic and held everything close to my chest. And, these days it's not like I want to blast all my dirty laundry and my traumas out on the World Wide Web for everybody to just see and whine about. But today I feel like a man. I feel like a provider. I feel like a protector. And I also feel like my trials and tribulations are testimony. That's it. And there are things I went through that I can talk about, and it's okay. I mean, certain things that have happened may not have been my fault. And there's a lot of men out there who I believe, and I know, don't talk about their childhood, or maybe they had a fine childhood, but they don't talk about the dark time they had in their teens or their 20s or whatever. And I was like that for a very long time, and it resulted in just a lot of misguided things. My backstory, I guess I'll start, about age 16 or so. I started, that was when I first started playing music professionally. Like, I started to get paid for playing music, which at 16 was pretty happy about, Then that actually skyrocketed. That went exponentially fast. I was playing 4 to 5 shows every night locally. And then by 17, I was flying back and forth to Los Angeles to record. I worked for studios and different management companies. So I would go on tour with certain bands, and I would record with certain bands when they were in studio. I had bands of my own, but none of them ever really made it big. I had some chances to be in some bands that were rather big, which that weird pull, that magnet that's always been in my life. I didn't go that route, which I'm glad I didn't. But I did have quite some years through my late teens and early 20s where I was quite successful just playing guitar with a lot of the rock bands that were popular and on the radio in the late 2000s, early 2010s, etc. You probably heard my guitar tracks. A lot of it I can't disclose as far as NDAs and things like that, who some of the bands were, but that typical your local rock station type stuff. Played a lot of guitar, saw some things that you hear about in Hollywood, like I've been to the Playboy Mansion before it have passed. I've seen the way that those parties progress and the way that those meetings progress and the way that, let's just say, the further down the hall, metaphorically speaking, that not always, but sometimes, the further you go down the hallway, the darker each room is, and the darker each room is, and the darker each room is. And, you start to feel guilty by association. And that's where I found myself at about 22 years old. I was on the precipice of maybe joining one of the biggest rock bands in the world at the time. Now I say rock bands in the world. By 2012 or 13, rock bands was not the music of the popular world. I think hip hop, rap music and such has kind of taken over rock as the dominant form of popular music these days. But still, I kind of had my shot. 2 things pulled me away from that. One, the singer of the band is a good friend of mine, and he kind of, without saying so many words, led me away from signing those deals and everything like that. And just the magnet, I don't know, I've always called it the magnet. Some things always pulled me in the right direction when I was about to go down the wrong one. And that's why I'm still here. That's why I'm okay. And that's why I do what I do.
So do you think that they had to do unsavory things to be popular in the music industry?
So I can't speak for everybody, of course. And I can speak for some people that I would be almost positive to say that I don't think they had to do anything terrible to be popular or famous. There are certainly people, at least a couple that I know personally, who didn't have to do anything ungodly or inhumane to make it. This particular band that I was going to join, and I had recorded a lot with, I had toured a lot with, as far as first party testimony from the lead singer, yes, there was definitely some things that he was very regretful about having done on his path to success. And that was exactly where we were going. It's not like they were done. They're still active today. I can't name the name. I'm sorry.
Sure. What sort of things did they do without telling us who it was? What sort of things did they do?
Just a top 10, always top 40 rock band. They're not from America.
No, but what sort of things do they have to do? No, not the music, but what sort of heinous acts did they have to do? You don't need to tell us who it was. I know.
I was like, I'll give a couple.
Yes, we're not playing that game. But just what sort of things were they asked to do? Compromising things were they asked to do? Sort of,
the typical things you hear about with underage women. Maybe things I've heard confirmed, of course, are the underage women. That's something that I've heard confirmed numerous times. And I want to emphasize the word underage because I don't mean like 18, really
children.
Underage children.
There were parties, and I can disclose something because I actually know a bit about this because I was very good friends with Corey Feldman.
Okay.
And he's spoken about these things very publicly. And I've traveled with Corey. I've been to Ibiza, Poland. We went to a Pink Floyd gig in Poland together. Been to Ibiza with him. I've been to Germany. I stayed at his house in Los Angeles. We were quite close. He stayed with me in London. We were quite close for a number of years. So I've asked him about this. And when we were in Ibiza with him and his ex-wife, Susie, they were telling me about the Eyes Wide Shut parties that they used to go to, and they wouldn't tell me quite how bad everything was, but he did say that they used to go to a parking lot and then they would leave their car there, then they get onto a coach with blackened out windows and like wear blindfolds and then arrive at a Hollywood mansion, and it was very much eyes wide shut with naked girls and trays of drugs and trays of condoms and all sorts of weird things happening in the basement ceremonial wise.
Absolutely. And I can confirm that as well. I've experienced the blindfold in the back of a limousine. It's not kidnapping or anything. You just, you're blindfolded when you go. And, it's all in good fun. Yeah. But yeah, and I'm actually very familiar as far as what Corey has come out with publicly. And I just feel so much for his story. And I feel like I have so much respect for him as a trailblazer because he was speaking on these things before it became so.
But that's because Corey Haim died because of it. That's what I think one of the biggest motivations behind him being so vocal was the fact that it killed his friend.
Absolutely.
And it was his best friend. That's what he said to me. So, and the interesting one, I asked him about Michael Jackson. He was the only one who wasn't dirty.
Yeah, I've also heard the same. I've had my personal beliefs. Everybody might, but I've never heard anything but from credible sources. He was like a child. Michael Jackson was good. He was a childish.
I spoke to Corey about it, and I spoke to Corey about it extensively, and he just said that he was like a child because he was Arrested Development because he was just put on tour. He had no Christmases, no birthdays. He was just working the whole time.
He was put on pause.
Yeah. And then basically he was just like a child. And so they used to, I think they would sometimes sleep in the same bed together, but there was nothing. It was just like friends sleeping in the same bed together. Like, you often sleep in the same bed as one of your friends. It wasn't anything sexual. It was just watching a movie and falling asleep.
Falling asleep.
It wasn't anything dodgy in any way. No.
Yeah, that's really great, honestly, to hear from another confirmed source. Because that's what I've always heard, and that's what I've always believed, that there wasn't anything going on there with Michael Jackson. No. And it goes back to something they say in recovery communities. When people start to use and they start to stuff down their emotions, they say that they stop developing emotionally. They arrested development emotionally. Yeah. And then when somebody gets, say, clean, so let's say they start, just for the example of this theory, let's say somebody started pushing all emotions away, whether it be with substances or whether it be with Michael's grueling young career as a young musician. Their life was put on pause. There was no emotional development. And when that's removed and you finally have the freedom to, let that bird free and let it fly, it flies from the age that it stops at. So you might be 40 years old, but you might be, you might be acting
7.
with the emotional intelligence of a 17-year-old at times, or a 7-year-old at times.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do that. And just before we came on camera, we were discussing the difference between British men and American men. And I was complaining about the dating pool and how few people in the UK have done the work, and how it seems like American men are actually doing more work, although you think they're not either.
Yeah, and I thought that was an interesting perspective, because in masculine male circles, in the locker rooms that I was in when I was a little younger and on like a football team, for example, we would have joked about a football team from London or whatever being like more feminine than us typically, and now I would consider it more evolved, more in touch with their emotions, more balanced.
Interestingly, I mean, like American football is like rugby. You haven't got any pads.
It's true.
Like that's
I've always respected rugby. I remember they'd play it in college, and I was like, oh, why did I never get exposed to this earlier?
It's a tough. I don't know. They have it's basically American football without the pads, isn't it?
Kind of, yeah. Just little tweaks in the rules, but basically, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So I think that's even more hardcore somehow. I don't know, but then again, I think American football, I think they bash each other harder than they would in rugby. So I think it's a bit more aggressive in that way, and that's why you need all the head thing, headgear, and
I think that's part of the argument is because they're wearing helmets, and I played football up until I was 18 years old, so I mean it's a real thing. I mean, because we're wearing helmets, you're hitting each other harder on purpose because you feel that you have the protection of a helmet, but your brain still bounces around in the, as they've discovered, the brain still bounces around inside the skull even with the helmet on. So you tend to do things that are a little more risky with your say head than you would if you didn't have a helmet on. I think that.
But they do that as well. They say that in skiing, don't they? Everyone thinks, people who are wearing a helmet, they end up taking bigger risks because they're wearing a helmet.
Like the helmet's going to save the life. Yeah. Risky stuff.
All right. So go on, tell us about your development. So what about organized crime? What the dickens?
Yeah. So, that's another, so I left, I didn't leave. I don't want to imply that I ever lived in Hollywood, but I was living in Florida. I went to college in Jacksonville, the University of North Florida. And, I would go and record in different places and tour and things like that and go to college. And, it was a pretty awesome life for, back then I thought it was a pretty awesome life for a 21, 22-year-old. I stopped touring and playing music professionally, and I just kind of, stayed in Florida. I left Jacksonville. I came back to the Tampa Bay area where I'm from. And, I was a little lost because I didn't have the life that I had been living, that fast-paced, crazy party, substance-fueled lifestyle that I was living for the past, 6 or 7 years, just nonstop. That had kind of stopped. So very quickly, I found myself in a place where I guess I always kind of craved that chaos. And, it all started small. I just, I'm fine speaking on this. I started just getting involved with some individuals selling small amounts of cannabis, which is no big deal. It's legal now, but back then it wasn't. But things progressed extremely quickly. I've always had, people say master manifesting and very quick manifesting and things like that. And I've always had that seeming ability to master manifest things. Things happen very quickly for me. It's always happened. And that goes both ways, bad and good. If I stay positive and I stay focused and I stay, in check with myself and doing the work that I need to do, things will go really well for me. But if I stop doing those things and I put my attention on the negativities and the tribulations rather than the triumphs, and lose the ability to see them as testimony rather than just problems, I like to see them as things that I've overcame. When I start looking into the negative, I'm also a master manifester of negativity.
Mm. It's a
So yeah,
dangerous thing, but being able to manifest, I speak about it quite regularly. It's not, it's like a baby with a machine gun at times. And you can, it, if you, it's a dangerous skill. So if you are very focused on negative things and you're a master manifester, you're going to bring all sorts of horrible things, including disease and trouble into your life. It seems like everybody wants to manifest. There's a huge trend towards manifesting, and people are talking
absolutely.
about it. You know, I don't know, Roxy Nafusi is huge and writing loads of books on manifest. I think she's writing her fourth at the
Yeah.
moment. And people are very, very excited about the concept of their dreams coming true, but people's nightmares come true first.
Ever since The Secret, the law of attraction and manifestation, I
Yeah,
think
they come
is
through as well. You just have to be very, very aware that you actually want there to be space between you focusing on something and it arriving.
yeah,
Instant manifestation, unless you've got your head really, really in check, is
of
extremely,
course.
extremely dangerous.
It is. And I can only speak from personal experience when saying, I guess it can seemingly happen without you even noticing. But I've always been that type of person. I can say I've truly always lived. I've never really held myself back from anything or any experience. And well, until the last few years, I've really started to have some balance in my life, and it's evolving further, and I'm ever more at peace. But I've always dove into everything full force. I just want to be immersed in it and just whatever it is. Like I'm all about it. But that's with that attitude, like you said, it's not just roses and rainbows and sunshine and money and boats and properties and things like that. It can be negative feelings, and it can be negative people, and it can be the good times that you might want to manifest could turn into too many good times aren't good times. We get into addiction and all that kind of stuff. I mean, everything needs
That was being
balance.
fun. It just stops being fun at a point, and I think it's good for your soul to be doing productive things. And then, and it's great to go and have a drink, or, I don't know, go and have some fun in that sort of way, if you can handle it, and if it doesn't pull you in and leads to something destructive. But it's also great to wake up on a Monday morning and get things done as
And
part of your service and as part of things which nourish your soul. It's otherwise, if you're not doing something which nourishes your soul, it's a bit of a sad existence.
I 100% agree, and I say that to people all the time. And I don't run any type of coaching service or anything like that, but I do have a fair number of mostly men who come to me regularly with just for counsel and just checking in, kind of like sponsees in a way, just younger men who just check in with me, and I'm there for them. I'll help them out, with advice and things like that. And I'm always telling them, I mean, this is my belief anyway, that especially for men, that they need to have they're not going to feel good if they don't have a purpose. They're not going to feel okay if they're not fulfilling needs of something, of someone. And they'll usually, these kids sometimes will come to me 19, 20 years old from a place of, Tyler, I'm so depressed. I don't feel okay. I don't want to be here anymore. And I dig deeper into what they're doing, and I find out that, well, their biggest achievements that they see that they have, their biggest accomplishments in the world are on, Xbox Live or something like that. And they make small changes in their life where they just feel like they're contributing to the greater good, contributing to society. They don't have to believe in what I believe is contributing to the cosmic conscious collective consciousness, but they could just believe that they're contributing to the greater good. And I've seen great results with that, with myself as well. If I don't have purpose, if I don't have meaning, if I'm not doing something that I feel good about, I tend to feel kind of numb, and maybe fill that space with something that shouldn't be. Yeah. That's how I was when I as we were talking on earlier, when I got back, when I stopped going on tour and everything like that. I wanted to still, I guess, subconsciously have that fast-paced lifestyle, but I didn't want to be involved in that industry. So what I ended up apparently manifesting was the same lifestyle, but it was highly illegal and very dangerous, and led to a lot of trauma for myself and others, a lot of violence, a lot of, I don't want to say regret, because I don't have regrets to this day. I'm at peace with things, but time. I mourn the loss of time that I could have been spending doing other things, doing better. And I ended up very high up in that world. And I guess I'll sum that story up by I had a very intense home invasion happen to me in Clearwater, Florida. My home was broken into. Actually, a musician, a rap artist that I used to do business with. He was actually kidnapped outside of a local gentleman's club, and he was made to make a phone call to me. And he came over to my house at about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning on a Friday night. And, I thought, obviously, this is fine. I was there alone with my girlfriend at the time. And 5 or 6 guys with Spider-Man masks came in. They all had long guns, shotguns, automatic weapons. They didn't knock. They kicked the door. And when I tried to close it, they shot through the door. It was extremely violent. It was a massively life-changing event. My girlfriend at the time was extremely traumatized. Unfortunately, I can say she's actually no longer with us. She could not handle that, the stress. She ended up succumbing to the pressure, and I don't know if I can say this, but she ended up taking her own life. So there was some guilt around that. The event was very violent. I narrowly escaped with my life. And that's really about it. They took everything else I had, obviously, and there's no insurance for that kind of thing. So that was a crazy time for me. But like always, master manifester. Ended up doing a slew of jobs or whatever, and going back to, I want to be specific on this one. I was selling cell phones. I've always been a good salesman, so I was random gigs selling cell phones, and that's where I met my current partner. And that's what that job served in my life, was simply just introducing her to me. That's it. Then I got into the interior design side of things. I had done property work and things like that in the past, just on my own. I've always been kind of handy and things like that. And, within a few years, I'd worked my way up to being the lead designer and head of sales for like a rather large interior design firm here in Tampa.
Amazing.
And I was enjoying that. I had a big office, I had a secretary, I had insurance, everything was going well. I'd say that's my fat and happy phase. I was also 260, 270 pounds. I'm only 5'7". That was 3 years ago.
I don't work in pounds. What's that? I mean, you have to divide it by 14. And my maths
kilos.
Kilos. Or in just hang on, or even in stone. Hang on. If I divide that by 14, I'll know how many stone it is. How many was it? 270 pounds, was it?
I was up to about 270. Yeah.
19 stone. That's 19 stone. Okay, that's big.
So today I'm 150.
Wow.
So I have shed almost an entire Tyler.
Yeah.
During this process.
That's pretty wild. How did you manage to lose that weight so quickly?
So, I mean, that came over the course of about, I guess it's been 20 months or so. I remember looking at the mark of 18 months and like measuring the progress, etc. Because at first it was kind of on purpose, but not any drastic measure. It was just all a part of that same thing. I'd worked myself up to a spot where I had a good career and everything like that. But to state it plainly and shortly, I just wasn't happy. I had started to dive deeper into my own self, into my own spirituality. I've always been a meditator. I started meditating with greater intent. I started meditating more frequently. I started going into trances. I started to care less and less about what I cared about, which was my job and commissions and selling a lot of jobs and things like that. And I just left. And At the same time, I was ridding a lot of attachments, which, that was an attachment to my job. I enjoyed not having that attachment. Of course, I had a little bit of a net for a few months, but that's another story. It didn't last forever. But removing negative things from my life. So that was removing my job, which I saw to be toxic. Removing people from my life who I saw to be toxic. I was dabbling with substance abuse again, and I have not done any substances of that sort or anything. It's been well over 3 years, and I'm happy to be, of a clear mind. I don't tout, cleanliness and sobriety, because I do use plant medicine. I do find it effective for certain purposes, for the right people in the right place. Don't give any advice on that, but I am a believer in certain plant medicines in certain settings for whatever that's worth. But otherwise, in the position that I was in 3.5 years ago or so, that was something that I really needed to rid myself of, hard substances, alcohol, bad foods. And that was just all.
These things don't work for everybody. Some things work for people and some things are very, very destructive. And I mean, I like alcohol, but I don't think it should be for everybody, because I think it's very destructive. I think that basically demons come in, and that's why I think people get possessed. I think that it's, there's a demon called alcohol.
You were thinking alcohol. Yeah, it's where so much alcohol comes in, you're blacked out. They said
you're blacked out. Now I think that's a possession. I think it's a demonic possession. And that's why people don't remember what the hell they did. And also when people get the fear the following day, like, oh my God, did I do X, Y, and Z? I think it lowers your aura, and then these demons come in, and then that's why you're the next day go, did I say something? Did I do something? And then if you have a blackout 100%. And you go and behave and are violent or aggressive or whatever because you've blacked out, don't take alcohol. If you can be like a silly, happy, jolly little drunk, or and then you can probably handle it, and if your personality doesn't totally change and you're just a bit more silly and fun and playful, then I think that's okay to drink. If you become a monster, you got to stay away from it and deal with those demons and make your energy system strong so that you can cope with it should you choose to. But if you change or black out, it's a very powerful drug, alcohol, and it shouldn't be taken lightly.
I think it's one of the most if not the most powerful drug in terms of, consequences and like what a person does.
Especially when they get violent with their children, and like parents will beat the living daylights out of their children, and they don't remember it. I mean, it's awful. It's terrible.
I think you said that really well. Something you said was, people come out when they're drunk or under the influence, and maybe they're angry, or maybe they're overtly sexual, or maybe they're overly talkative. Maybe they're just a little belligerent and obnoxious and attention seeking when normally they're shy. That's like not such a bad thing, not as bad as being violent, but we've all seen that. The drunk guy who's just talking way too much and just, Jekyll and Hyde in any case. But something you said was, it's something that they haven't dealt with, demons that they haven't dealt with. I think, I love what you said, that I think that truly is demons that one has not dealt with. And when, you lose inhibition like that, when you allow that part of the brain, whatever alcohol, I don't want to speak from a neuroscience perspective, but when alcohol takes over that part of the brain, it does seem to allow the quote unquote demons to creep in. And if those
but when you say quote unquote, I don't think they're metaphorical demons. I think they're literal demons.
Literal demons.
Yeah, I think it's an actual possession. I think it is literally that, because I've got a friend who has, a rap sheet of psychological issues, bipolar, borderline personality disorder. The list goes on. I can't even remember half of them, but she told me now when she drinks alcohol, sometimes she has this, and I call them demons, and it's the word that she actually uses, but she says that she's not in the driving seat.
It's the
And I
word I
said,
used to use when I was a heavy drinker.
demons.
The demons, and
Yeah,
I
it's
thought it
literally
was
this.
funny,
But
but
she
it's
said
not.
that she's not in the driving seat. So what happens is she can see herself being aggressive, violent, sometimes kicking and screaming and scratching and really fitting and being very, very, very aggressive and very violent. But she can see that she's doing that, but she's not in the driving seat. She's not in control of herself. The demon has literally taken her over, and she can
Absolutely.
see what her physical body's doing, but she has no control over her physical form because someone else, a demon, is driving her.
A
And
negative entity or whatever, a
something.
negative spirit, a demon. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Um,
driving her body. So, I do think that, she sees it in a very visceral and not knowable way, but it's something that happens. And I think that when people are drunk, they don't necessarily see that they're taking it over. But what else is the reason for the blackouts?
and the behavior, that the Jekyll and Hyde behavior, absolutely.
And
One
the
blackout.
potential, and also what's this about people's inhibitions going down so dramatically that they go and do
So
something that
drastically.
they know that they shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because the
Sometimes
thing is,
unspeakable things. I mean, it's all fun and well. Somebody lets a little funny story slip about something they did that was embarrassing to themselves, but sometimes that we know that really is a slippery slope. And
or
yeah,
potentially sleeping with someone who they
exactly.
in a monogamous relationship, that sort of stuff. I
Hmm.
always find that strange because I know from my personal experience, I've never done that, and I know what I'm doing at the time. Like, there's never been a point where I haven't, because I'm like, should I go and do something? And I'm like, nah, I'm not going to go and do it. I always know what I'm doing at the time. And I always wonder
That's,
about these people who black out. Do they know what they're doing at the time, or are they taken over so they don't know what they're doing at the time? What do you think?
I would say no. I used to have a very heavy drinking habit. I mean, it was very encouraged in the industry I was in, playing music. And I mean, obviously, just going to a big university in Florida, there was a lot of drinking, a lot of partying going on. Um,
Mm.
I was someone who, I really liked the feeling of alcohol at one point in my life, to the point of it, when I started drinking, I didn't want to stop drinking. And,
Mm.
what seemed to happen eventually was that I would black out. And
Mm.
no, absolutely not. I did not know what I was doing while I was doing it many times.
Mm.
I was ashamed to admit it, but these are things that I'm not ashamed to admit anymore, because
Helpful.
not that I didn't wish that I mean, I'm not proud of them, but I know they happened for a reason. I know they're things that I went through, and now I have contrast and appreciation for the life that I have now. But I definitely identify with that feeling of dread in the morning, where it's almost like you're worried about what someone else did while they were in control of your body. What did the demon do when he got a hold of me? I believe that, one who's in a high enough state of frequency, a high enough state of what they say vibrational frequency. And I've heard this from a lot of channelers. I speak to them on my show. I do a lot of live conversations with channelers and things like that. And I've heard it as a theme lately that, this whole ascension movement, both individually and collective, that if we are truly positive enough and we have risen highly enough in terms of vibrational frequency, the negative entities and negative, beings, etc., demons for that matter, have a much more difficult time having an impact on us, if they even have that ability at all. But
Mm.
with the alcohol, which I believe is a derivative of Arabic, but with alcohol, I think what's really happening there, just from my own looking back on perspective, is somebody else was there. It wasn't me, and it's very familiar and comfortable to refer to it as a demon, because I didn't like that person in
Yeah.
myself, and I've of course have seen it in others as well. But I mean, if you're in that place, you're not stuck in that place. It's what I had to do is I had to face those demons sober, and it turned out there was some demons to face sober, and that's, like I touched on before. I don't tout 100% cleanliness and sobriety. I will have an occasional glass of champagne at a wedding or something like that. I'm not 100%
Well, I
lifetime
think the
alcohol
difference
free.
is, I think that the difference, the opposite of being a drunk is not necessarily being a sober, or sorry, not the opposite. So the optimal. I think the optimal is that it doesn't have any hold on you, so you
Of
can take
course.
it or leave it. So the problem that an issue that I have with people who are, in it. I think it's wonderful that people do get into NA or AA and things like that if they're being very destructive to people. But what worries me about it, it's probably a better way to phrase it, is that it's still there. It's still lurking. So if they did have one drink, this is what they always say. They had one drink, they'd end up having, several bottles, and they'd go off the rails very quickly, and then the destructive behavior would be continuing. What would be actually cured, if you want to use that word, would be that they can take it or leave it, no pressure in any way to take it. But if they had a glass of champagne, that they wouldn't need 5 bottles, that they just have no attachment to it. The lack of
100%.
attachment to it is really curing it. That you just, I mean, I've got a bar in my house. I actually have a bar.
Right.
So,
So you're probably not an alcoholic if you're
I'm not
not
an alcoholic.
running to it every morning. And if you do run to it, you're not, you can stop, right? You don't have to keep going back until you black out, right?
I mean, I've never blacked out, and
That's great.
I'll often go weeks or months without having a drink because I just don't think about it. And then someone will say, "Should have a glass of wine," and we'll have a glass of wine or a bottle or whatever.
Absolutely.
So, but that's the thing. I'm not addicted to alcohol, and
And
that's
that's
very
healthy,
clear.
healthy
Yeah.
use of something that can certainly be, it can certainly be demonized and is shunned by a lot of groups, cultures, yeah,
But I
AA
think
and NA,
I
etc.
think it should be. I think it should be actually shunned by cultures because I don't think very many people can handle it and not be taken over by it. I think it's extremely, extremely dangerous. And only if you've reached some sort of peace within or level of spiritual evolution is it really safe to be exposing yourself to it regularly.
That's a really valid thing to bring up, Antonia. You're right. Alcohol is such a huge part of literally our mainstream culture, both yours and mine. Great Britain and America alike, and almost everywhere in the world, alcohol is just a huge part of our culture.
Yeah.
Whether your family is a big drinking family or not, alcohol is a part of the culture. You see commercials for it. You see it at every store. It sponsors every event. It's considered the lubricant and the kind of the ceremonial part of the ceremony of a lot of social gatherings and events, and it's not frowned upon. But I think what you said there is really, it's quite a revelation. It's quite refreshing to hear somebody say that, like, that's kind of a problem.
It is a problem, but I'll tell you what it does, and this is something very interesting. So I was told years ago that someone was doing a ceremony and they closed the ceremony by drinking wine. Now, the reason that they said that they closed the ceremony by drinking wine is because it disconnects you from source. So maybe it's pushed in society to disconnect us from source.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how, that's where the tinfoil hat Tyler comes out and thinks. I mean, I'm always looking at anything with a lot of advertising behind it and a lot of mainstream push behind it. I didn't used to, but now I look at it with, unfortunately, just the world that I live in. I look at things through the lens of, okay, why is it that way? What are they really? Who's they? Not, but what's really the agenda behind whoever's doing this, and what's the intended reaction from me? I mean, companies and governments alike, I'm well aware that they make an action, put out a product, put out an advertisement or an agenda or a storyline, and that's intended to have a certain response from the public. That's my belief anyway. And then, the public are supposed to react a certain way, and everything goes according to quote unquote agenda. It's a little conspiracy sounding, but I mean, that's the lens that I look at things through. I mean,
yeah, I think we should, be a bit more aware of what is going on around us. I think it's easy to just sort of let things go. But I think it's important to be introspective about various different things. Okay, so your podcast name is Immersive Podcast, which you've got on your YouTube channels, you said. Have you got anything else you'd like to mention, and some final words of wisdom from you, please?
Well, Antonia, yes, the Immersive Podcast. We're on YouTube and Spotify right now. So if you want to check that out, please go ahead and do so. I'm filming 2 episodes. I'm putting out 2 episodes a week. Upcoming guests, Debbie Solaris, Sarah Bressman, Cosme, Tim Tactics, many of the Gaia personalities. Ismael Perez was on recently. And I'm going to be having practitioners, healers, and things like that showcase their gifts, both on the show and on me when applicable, of course. And it's not just going to be spirituality and healers. I mean, I intend to bridge the gap and bring on some alternative viewpoints, which are respected from maybe the other side, maybe academia, and bring on some authors and things like that to kind of share their side of things and really try to bridge that gap between, I hate to be cliche, but science and spirituality, the gap that I want to contribute to the ascension. I want to contribute to everyone coming back to the one rather than the dissension, which is, everyone separating. I want to get us all back to source. I know that's not one man's job, but the way I can facilitate that right now is through the Immersive Podcast. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and I really appreciate you.
Wonderful. Any final words of wisdom?
Final words of wisdom. If there's any questions you have about anything I've said here, you can reach me personally. I try to be really interactive with anybody in any community, anybody who's interested in anything that I'm doing. So feel free to send me a message. I'm most responsive on Instagram. My handle is Tivador. I hope it's in the link or there near my name.
It's on the screen right now.
On the screen there. So that's the easiest way to get a hold of me personally. I want to shout out GFL Clothing. They are a sponsor of mine. Clothing for light workers. That's what they are. They are a company of a couple people who have been in the fashion industry for a very long time, and like a lot of us have had kind of an awakening and moved into a place where they wanted to, how can they help with their skills in the new earth? And that's clothing for the new earth. So that's there's a link in the description for that company as well. They're a very altruistic organization. That's all I'm promoting right now is positivity. And on my podcast, a lot of people are promoting the events that they have upcoming. Any of the bigger spiritual, quantum physics, etc. conferences and conventions in the US this summer, I will be at, likely as press or as a...
Are you coming to I am going to the Promise Revealed in Mount Shasta. I'm a speaker there. Are you coming to that one?
What date is this? That the portal?
July. What date is it? Please, Karen, type it for me in the private chat. We'll find out. She's looking. It's July something. I can look it up on my phone as well. Let's see who wins. It's soon. It's July 18th to 21st, I think. Somewhere around there.
What's the name of that event again?
It's called the Promise Revealed.
Promise Revealed.
In Mount Shasta. So I'm going to be speaking there. I think I'm doing something. I think it starts on the Friday. I'm arriving on the Thursday, the 18th, and then starting doing the talking on the Friday. And then I'm going to be staying until the 24th, and then sort of hanging around Mount Shasta and paddleboarding and hiking and all that jazz.
That's amazing.
19th to the 21st of July are the official dates.
Okay. So I've actually, I have an acquaintance who she lives at Mount Shasta. She runs tours there and everything. Pardon me. I was looking at my calendar there.
Well, maybe I'll see you there.
I was invited out for an 8/8 portal thing. It's like event. So that's kind of interesting. But my summer is like really free. I'm also involved in decentralized finance, cryptocurrency. I've been blessed to get in early on that. So that's a little bit, people might wonder, like, why does he have all this time? I also, I believe in decentralized finance. I believe in sovereignty. I believe in freedom. And that's something that I've always been involved in. So I'm blessed to have a little bit of freedom right now, especially this summer.
Amazing. Well, come to Mount Shasta.
Do those things and come to Mount Shasta. Exactly.
Yay! All right, let's say goodbye to everyone now. So thank you, Tyler, for being on the podcast. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, guys. Bye, Antonia.